Hi, welcome to The Natural Alternative with Madonna Guy. Today I am so delighted to have with me Arthur Firstenberg. Arthur is a scientist, author and journalist who is at the forefront of a global movement to tear down the taboo surrounding electromagnetic radiation. After graduating Phi Beta Kappa from Cornell University with a mathematics degree, he attended the University of California, Irvine School of Medicine from 1978 to 1982. Injury by X-ray overdose cut short his medical career. For the past 4 decades, he has been a researcher, consultant and lecturer on the health and environmental effects of electromagnetic radiation, as well as a practitioner of several healing arts. We'll be chatting about wireless energy being radiation, cell towers on the ocean floor, satellites above, the damaging effect of radiation on our cells, metabolism and mitochondria, and how we can get involved. Welcome, Arthur.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I've listened to several of your interviews, and I love the fact that you are knowledgeable in so much about this with your decades of experience. Tell me about the injury that you had back in the 70s.
It was from dental x-rays. I had my first root canal, and it bothered me all over my body tremendously, so I kept on going back to the dentist, and I had 40 or 50 x-rays in the course of a summer. And during the last x-ray, I was sitting in the dentist's chair, and he turned on the machine for a second, and I felt an electric current. I felt something give way in the back of my skull, and I felt an electric current travel through my body from my head out through my toes. Scared the dickens out of me.
Absolutely.
And I went back to the hospital for rounds. I was on my second year of medical school, at the end of my second year of medical school at that time. And the next morning I could feel electricity. It's the only way to describe it. I could feel electricity from every electrical appliance in the hospital. So this happened to me overnight. It happened to me actually in a matter of seconds.
And how did that affect your health moving forwards?
Well, one day, at the end of my third year of medical school, I was on inpatient pediatric rotation, and I collapsed on the floor with all the symptoms of a heart attack.
Oh, goodness.
And at that point, I moved in with my girlfriend in Northern California, and I resigned from medical school after 3 years of education. I had already taken a leave of absence for 9 months, during which I had that root canal tooth extracted from my mouth, recovered my health, went back to school in that horrible, horrible electromagnetic environment, and it nearly killed me.
And is that what encouraged you to get into this and really start looking at what was going on? Were you aware of it at the time?
Yes, I knew what was happening to me.
Right.
I had heard of it during the 1970s, and I watched out for it.
Yeah.
So when it happened to me, I knew immediately what was going on. Most people do not.
So watching what's happening with 5G currently, with all of the satellites and everything, this must be your worst nightmare, given your decades of research into this.
Well, I am alarmed at what is happening to our world. It's not a selfish campaign. I'm not doing this on behalf of myself. I'm doing this in cooperation with activists all over the world in an effort to save the planet. Birds are disappearing. Insects are disappearing. Animal life is dwindling. Amphibians are going extinct at an alarming rate. And we have pandemics, not just of supposedly COVID-19, but diabetes and heart disease, and depression and anxiety. And it's like it's a rare person anymore who is not medicated in some form or another. The quality of life and the vitality of life is under assault. It's under intense assault from radiation, basically from wireless technology.
And there are studies confirming everything you've just said, isn't there? That just about every health condition can be linked back to the radiation on the planet.
Not every health condition. There are such things as viruses and bacteria.
Yes.
And also we have other assaults, pesticides, plastics. We're swimming in a sea of toxic chemicals besides the radiation. But yes, there are, to most people, an unbelievable number of scientific research studies on specifically the effect of radio frequency radiation. Not a whole lot on diabetes, but what there is proof. We don't need thousands of studies, but there are tens of thousands of studies showing the effects on the nervous system, a lot of them on cancer, a lot of them on the heart, cellular metabolism, you name it, there are studies on it.
And I've heard that it can affect the metabolism of the body. So people having issues with things like challenges with weight loss, challenges with energy, that sort of thing. Can you speak to that?
Yes, it causes both weight gain and weight loss.
Right.
Depending on your genetic makeup, because electromagnetic fields affect electrons. So the metabolism of our food, the last step is in the mitochondria of our cells, in the electron transport chain, and that is a tiny electrical current which transmits the electrons generated by the digestion of our food to the oxygen we breathe. In other words, we have to burn our food. We have to breathe, and the oxygen we breathe burns our food, and that takes place in an electron transport chain, and the motion of those electrons are interfered with by electromagnetic fields. So if your mitochondria are interfered with, your metabolism is interfered with, you're not digesting your sugars, fats, and proteins efficiently. So depending on the response of your body, they back up into your bloodstream. You either excrete them like mad in your urine, which is one of the reasons we have such a high rate of diabetes, or you deposit them in your fat cells, and you get fat. So you either get skinny or you get fat. But either way, it's a dramatic interference with metabolism.
So for people who do have, like, are there certain organs in the body that we know that these radioactive, what do we call them, radioactive particles? Are there certain areas where they know that they build up?
Radio waves.
Radio waves, right. So because I've heard that EMFs can build up in the gut, the brain, the uterus, and the spine. Is that sort, which is why there's so many nervous system issues? That's been part of my
You build up a charge in your whole body. It doesn't just build up in one place or another. It either goes through you into the earth, or it builds up in your body. Everywhere. And our bodies are electrical. We're electrical equipment. Our nerves operate on electricity. The pacemakers of our heart that operates on electricity. The mitochondria, the electron transport chain. That's our metabolic rate. That works on electricity. Our brain works on electricity. The meridian, our acupuncture meridians.
Yeah.
Those are electrical channels. So when we get bombarded by radiation, it induces electric currents in all of these channels throughout our body, in every organ, in every cell, in every meridian, in every nerve, everywhere.
So what sort of, did you use treatments to help you get over your symptoms that you experienced 40 years ago? Like, what did you use to, or did it just sort of end up resolving itself naturally?
I practiced strict avoidance.
Right, yes.
I moved into a remote location in the forest in Northern California, and we shut off the electricity every night. And over a period of 3 years, my health returned to absolutely normal.
3 years.
It took 3 years. I learned while I was up there that there is a very powerful radar station to the east of that town that we were living in. So I was not unexposed, but it was avoidance as much as possible was the key to regaining health.
So
today that is almost impossible.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So really people need to be, besides getting rid of their mobile phones and their wireless devices, people really need to be doing something to protect themselves within their homes as well as detoxifying on a daily basis, would you think?
Well, it's very difficult today. That's why the thrust of my campaign today is not how to protect yourself, because that is getting more and more impossible.
Yeah.
But it is to unite as a world in putting an end to this destructive technology. Like, throw away your cell phones, put an Ethernet cable on your computer, get rid of your Wi-Fi, get rid of all your wireless devices. Do not support these technologies. Do not support these industries. And that's the only way it's going to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, my hubby wants to get a smart meter on the house, and I've been saying, no, I don't want to do it. And I think I'm going to lose that
Smart
fight.
meters are almost worse than cell phones, than
Yeah.
mobile phones.
Tell us about smart meters, Arthur.
Oh boy, we're fighting smart meters right now in New Mexico, where I live. We do not have them yet. But what they are is, instead of a meter reader coming to read your electric meter every month, they put a new meter on your house, which is called a smart meter, that is a wireless device. So instead of someone having to come and read your electrical usage, it broadcasts it wirelessly to the electric company.
Right.
And it's on your house 24/7, all day long, 365 days a year, and it emits signals continually to the electric company, and all of your electricity, all of the electric wiring that comes into your house goes through the smart meter. So all of the frequencies that are emitted by the smart meter get transferred onto your electrical wiring, and all of the electrical wiring in your house becomes a big antenna, and you're living in this antenna.
Oh
And
my
it's horrible.
goodness. I had no idea it was that bad. Okay.
And it's
So
killing
then if
people.
you've got thousands of
Killing
houses that
people.
are all doing this.
It's killing people, and it's killing the birds and the insects and the wildlife, and yeah, that and cell phones. But it's almost worse than cell phones because you can't shut it off.
Okay, I'll have this discussion again with my hubby. And it's my grandson that I worry most about, like he's only 5 and, not only, he's already had health issues with his lungs since he was born. And so with the smart meters, so there's no protection we can do from that for that once they're in our neighborhoods. You're not really about sort of protect, like Tesla devices and that sort of thing.
You can put a shield on your own smart meter so that the radiation won't be directed directly into your house, but it still gets on your house wiring.
Right. Okay. And with the satellites going up into our with the links to all of the things like, and I know he's only one of them, but Elon Musk and
yes.
all of these companies who want these satellites in the atmosphere, how are they affecting us?
Well, that is a very complex subject. Very few people, if any, are studying it. People, Western science, pretend that we are autonomous individuals, separate from each other, separate from the Earth, separate from the universe, and that nothing that occurs hundreds of miles away up in the ionosphere could possibly affect us. And they're so far away, they're hundreds of miles away, or hundreds of kilometers away. The problem is that we are part of our planet, and we live in the Earth's magnetic field, and we live in the electrical field between the Earth and the ionosphere, and we live with the Schumann resonances, which are generated by lightning, and that 7.8 hertz and 14 hertz and 20 hertz, 26, 32, I think. And that is the resonant frequencies of the biosphere that we live in. And there's also a global electrical circuit that travels through the ionosphere around the Earth, down to the Earth through the atmosphere, through our bodies, into the Earth, along the Earth, back up to the ionosphere during thunderstorms. That's what lightning is for, is to complete that circuit. And we are part of it. And these satellites, these thousands and thousands of satellites already, more than 7,000 already, are in the ionosphere, emitting all this radiation, these pulsations and modulated low frequencies that are modulating to a small degree. They're modulating the global electric circuit. So we essentially now have dirty electricity flowing through our bodies, and nobody is studying it. Except that we know from surveys that I'm doing, and I don't know if anybody else is doing it, but when a lot of these satellites get launched at once, people feel it all over the planet. We have aches and pains and itching and tinnitus and problems with our eyes and our hands and our feet. It's like This is doing something to our internal circuitry.
And how many satellites did you say we have up there already?
More than 7,000.
Wow.
Elon Musk just added another 54 yesterday.
And do you feel it when these satellites go up into the...
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've got clients who are sensitive, but I haven't heard anyone connect those two things together. So that will be interesting to see whether anyone connects the dots. And you've got...
For some reason, when OneWeb began launching its satellites again on December the 8th, I felt it pains throughout my body, and a lot of other people felt it all around the world.
Because I've had like low-level fibromyalgia that I've kept under control with natural supplements, for 30 years. And occasionally it's just so bad that I sort of think, oh man, and it makes me relook at my diet and my, everything. And because I can take horse doses of supplements, I sort of just up everything and hope it all settles down again within a few days. But that'll be interesting to... Because they don't advertise when they're releasing these satellites, or do they?
There are websites you can go to that list all the upcoming launches that are planned, yes.
Right, okay. But you're very prolific on your website, so and your email, so I'll make sure I put those details down the bottom so that everyone can join your newsletter. Because, yeah, one of the things that years and years ago, I had a client who would build up EMFs, and she would actually have these major migraines, but it was about every 3 weeks. So it wasn't related to her menstrual cycle. It was sort of something separate from that. And once she got some devices in her house that at the very least started to sop up some of these radio waves, she stopped getting these migraines every 3 weeks. But she always felt like the migraines was a bit of a big reset for her body, because she felt heaps better. And for the 3 weeks after the migraine, she would just feel more and more unwell until finally she would have this migraine. And it was a couple of devices that she actually in her shop as well. She found out after she'd been there for years and years that when they actually had all of the electrical boards for all of the shops, it was a strip shop. They were all at the back of her little shop. So she was just living in this toxic soup, working in this toxic soup.
No wonder, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a doctor at the moment who's trying to create a Faraday cage to sort of see whether or not that helps in blocking some of these radio waves as well. So he's sort of doing some experiments for some of his most sensitive clients.
I live in an adobe house in the southwestern United States, and it's made of earth, and it blocks most of the radio waves. So that's part of what's keeping me healthy.
Right. Huh. That's so cool. One of my clients, like you, she finds that when she's asked all of her neighbours to turn off their Wi-Fi at nighttime, and they've got an agreement and regularly they forget, but she can see on her devices when there's other devices on around her. And she has a caravan that's out in the middle of, it's sort of like 20 Ks away from the city. And if she goes and stays in this caravan inside this park, then she can get some sleep, whereas she just doesn't sleep.
Yes, she's lucky she has that.
Yeah. And so people can sign I love the no cell phone campaign that you've launched. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, people could go to the website echoearth.org, ECHO earth.org, and that's End Cell Phones Here on Earth. And they can sign a pledge either that they have no mobile phone, or that they will get rid of their mobile phone by the spring equinox of 2023, March 21st, I think it is.
Yeah. And if you were to tell people, because I know lots of people are sort of talking about, we've got to get away from these smart devices, because we've got so many in houses. So people are even unaware of how many devices we have that are Wi-Fi, that are, how many do you think sort of people have on average?
Well, the average American has 25 different wireless devices in their homes.
Wow. And each one is emitting radiation.
Correct. That's what wireless means, radiation.
Wireless means radiation. And people need to say that like a mantra.
Yeah, wireless means radiation. And 25, 30 years ago, people had 0 wireless devices in their homes. Today, 25. Unless you were a ham radio operator or one of those few wealthy people that already had a cell phone, an analog cell phone, but very few people had them.
Yeah. Did you have any luck at the COP27 in Egypt?
Kathleen made some contacts, and she has some email addresses and phone numbers of people that we will be talking to.
Right. Do you think that politicians and governments are simply unaware of the damage of what is happening on the planet, or do you think they know?
I think they are either completely unaware or they don't believe it. We as a society have been in denial for, since the middle of the 19th century. Well, actually longer than that, since the electric battery was invented in the year 1808. We have been in denial that electricity has anything to do with life, and people don't want to know it.
It's quite terrifying. No, it's not terrifying. It's challenging. It's challenging moving forward, knowing this is everywhere and knowing what we need to do. And it's only going to be the sensitive canaries initially who make the changes, isn't it? But that's not going to be enough for them.
Even the sensitive canaries lots of them are using mobile phones now. So
right.
It's becoming such a requirement to be a member of society that it's getting more and more difficult.
So how far away, and like you say, because we are building this net of electricity around the planet with the satellites and everything, is that going to end up affecting the ozone and things like that? Or is that totally separate?
Oh, that is a good question. It's the rocket exhaust that is affecting the ozone.
Right.
Every rocket that is launched puts tons of nitrogen oxides and this and that oxides and water vapor and all this stuff that doesn't belong up in the atmosphere, and a lot of it destroys ozone.
With one of my friends is in New Zealand, and she lives next door. She's on quite a large, beautiful property that's been in the family for generations. And next door, there's a dairy farm, and the 300 cows on there actually have those halters around their neck that are Wi-Fi that connect to the farmer's database.
Yeah.
And her fiance's actually been having heart issues. So they've spoken to the farmer. He's not going to stop using the halters. I did wonder what was happening to the dairy milk with all these cows wearing these
I'm sure it's affecting it.
And this sort of technology is going to be taking off all around the world with animals, isn't it? Like, it's not just going to be that one farm.
It's already the case.
Right.
Practically all farm animals have radio tracking devices. Lots of wild animals have radio tracking devices. The environmentalists are putting these devices to track wildlife, supposedly for their benefit. And and all pets, it's like you can't even adopt a dog or a cat anymore that's not chipped. It's legally required.
Yeah. It's also ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous, yes.
Yeah. And because it's, I suppose you haven't seen it.
Putting it on whales in the ocean, it's really heartbreaking what's happening.
Oh, goodness. And with the electromagnetic radiation that people have been aware of, because most people have never read on their mobile phone where it actually says this shouldn't be kept on your person, and there's actually in the information on a mobile phone device, it actually says somewhere in there not to have it on our person, and we, people put them, yeah. And then the little earbuds that everyone's doing, you see people going for their jog with their earbuds in, and I think, what's that doing to our brains?
There also people that are hard of hearing. All hearing aids now have Bluetooth in them. They're all wireless.
I had not thought of hearing aids. Oh, I wonder if there's a link with dementia and things like that as we get older,
I'm sure there is.
because that's gone up exponentially the last 10 years. Dementia, Alzheimer's, MS, all of these neurological issues.
Yes.
And you've also got a signature page for people to sign saying get rid of 5G on the planet as well, don't you?
Yes, that is 5gspaceappeal.org. 5gspaceappeal.org, the international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space. It has more than 300,000 signatures. It would be great if we had 3 million signatures, but we don't yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And yes, it is still collecting signatures.
Yeah. And you're incredibly prolific with your newsletters as well. So once again, I'll have your website down the bottom so people can join your newsletter.
If people want to subscribe, it's cellphonetaskforce.org/subscribe.
Excellent. And I'm sort of just curious as well, with people who have, like with the satellites going up into the atmosphere and people feeling this sort of stuff, how do they find out what has actually happened on the planet? Like, because some people feel out of control with their health. I suppose your newsletter would be a good place to start because you are up to date with what is going on the planet and you're releasing that information.
You can read all my back newsletters. There's more than 50 of them posted already. cellphonetaskforce.org/newsletters.
Yeah. One of my clients is chemical sensitive, and she used to be very aware of when they were spraying. So for her, a lot of it was pesticides and things like that. So she knew that there was a government website where she could go and have a look and see people have to, the aerial spraying, I think they have to log and say when they're going to be doing it. So then she could say, this is why I'm feeling like rubbish today, because 2 days ago up at Noosa, they were doing yada, yada, yada. But it is a challenge with the pollution.
With the wireless, it's much more of a challenge because it's coming from 1,000 different directions. It's not just one. And the satellites, yes, it's difficult to monitor because it's not just one country or one company. China's launching satellites, and Russia's launching satellites, and practically every big industry is launching satellites. There's Gunther's Space, but I don't think that's the best place to monitor what's going to happen. NASA probably has a page monitoring. There's various websites that if you Google space launches, you can find out what is being planned, but it doesn't tell you everything.
Yeah. And there's even cell towers on the ocean floor. I said that to someone and they told me I was crazy, that there's no way that would be the case. Is that the case?
That is the case. They are creating what they call smart oceans and the Internet of Underwater Things.
Oh, goodness. No.
So, yes, they are putting cell towers on the ocean floors. They are putting repeaters in the depths of the ocean at various depths. They are putting smart robots underwater. They are putting smart buoys on the surface of the ocean. They are sailing smart ships. The goal is that they're putting smart submarines underwater. The goal is to be able to wirelessly communicate from any point underwater, anywhere on the planet, to everywhere else.
That's phenomenal. And once again, what is this going to be doing to our ocean life?
What has it already done to our ocean life? A lot of what radio waves do not work well for long distances underwater. They are using radio waves for short and medium range communication underwater, and for long range communication, they're using acoustic waves, sound waves. And this is very loud sound waves, up to 202 decibels, and they are deafening ocean life.
Really? Oh my goodness. And they know this?
Well, the people who are doing it probably are oblivious, but other people that are monitoring it know this, yes. There's a big uproar about about what's going on underwater with the sonic radiation.
Is it messing with the coral reef? Like, is this part of the climate change shenanigans? Like, is it part of what's messing with our reef?
Most of what's messing with the coral reef is the acidification of the ocean from the increase in carbon dioxide. That is bleaching and killing the coral reefs.
It's all a bit of a mess, isn't it?
Yes.
And how many, like, do we know how many stations there are on the ocean floor? How many cell towers?
Nobody is monitoring that.
Right. Yay. And is it just one of those things that individual companies can put up?
Individual companies are doing it, governments are doing it, environmentalists are doing it to monitor what's going on. It's like everybody is using the latest technology for everything.
Yeah. And I saw in one of your posts that over 400,000 satellites have been approved or proposed to be.
Correct.
Surely if that doesn't give people pause, nothing will.
Right. Elon Musk, SpaceX alone has applied for 42,000 satellites. And so far they've only approved 12,000 of them, the FCC.
And one would imagine there can't be that much to a proposal getting approved. If there's this many already, they're not paying attention to the side effects or the effects of all of this radiation, or they're just believing that it's safe and effective. So therefore they're just moving forwards without thinking about it. So tell us about the most recent book you've published, because you've talked about the electricity through the ages.
It's called The Invisible Rainbow. Subtitle is A History of Electricity and Life. And I trace the history of electricity from an environmental point of view from the year 1746 until today.
1746. Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And what did you discover as you were researching that?
I discovered that every new invention had both health and environmental consequences, every single one. This is not new.
Yeah.
The telegraph had the disease that was in the 19th century. It was called neurasthenia, and the first prescription coincided with the rollout of the telegraph wires all over the world. Nobody could find a physical cause. And at the turn of the 20th century, Sigmund Freud gave it a new name. He called it anxiety neurosis.
Right. Because I was thinking neurasthenia, is that some sort of nerve pain or nerve inflammation?
That's right. And today it's called anxiety disorder. And quarter of the world suffers from anxiety, and it's considered normal. It's not normal at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a study once that was, I think it was in the US, every time they do a census for the past 100 years, because it was the 100-year one that was sort of interesting, because they asked some questions in there about stress in life and all sorts of stuff. And basically what they were saying was that every decade, anxiety had increased by 10% to the previous. So, it's like radiation now, it's ubiquitous. And like you say, there's a huge connection there with the radiation.
People think it's normal. People think it's normal to be anxious. People think depression is normal. People think it's normal to have diabetes and cancer. It's like 1 out of 2 people will get cancer during their lifetime. If you go back to the year 1850, nobody had cancer. It's not normal, but people think it is.
Yeah. It's funny, I was reading a book set, 200 years ago, and they were talking about health conditions. And part of my brain, because, sort of relearn everything, my thing in the last few years, I had this thought, I wonder if these health conditions were really there, or whether or not this is just the modern author assuming that we always had all of these health conditions. So that was sort of my thought recently when I was reading something.
Well, I'll tell you something that's not in my book, but I've discovered a correlation I think is really interesting, is that smallpox, and this is off the topic of EMFs, but it's kind of related. Smallpox vaccination became mandatory for the first time in the first country, that was England, in the year 1808. And the first clinical description of schizophrenia in the medical literature occurred in the year 1808. Isn't that a coincidence?
Huh. Very. Yeah, and actually, sort of, I'm wondering whether or not you touched on this in your book. I think Dr. Tom Cowan at one stage was talking about every big change in the electricity, which often coincides with a war somewhere. They need to increase, the ability to communicate around the planet. So there's this
Right.
next level of radiation, I suppose. And therefore, there's been like a illness that's sort of spread at the same time. There's been a release to the next level of
that is in my book. That's in chapters 7, 8, and 9 of my book. Talks about influenza, and there was an influenza pandemic, not necessarily with every war, but World War I, with what they call a Spanish influenza, was caused by the entry of the United States into the war with a new level of wireless communication on Navy ships that went everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't think about ships either. Yeah, once again, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And I heard you having a discussion about long COVID as well. Like, where do you, I imagine a lot of, because people with all of this radiation with the 5G being rolled out around the place, it's weakening people's immune systems.
It is. Yes, but the peculiar thing about long COVID is that, at least from what I have read, 50% of the people with so-called long COVID test negative for COVID. So why do they call it long COVID? The symptoms of long COVID are virtually identical to what the Soviet Union used to call radio wave sickness. And I did publish a comparison between those two lists of symptoms.
So if they're not testing up for COVID and they're still getting diagnosed with long COVID, once again, it muddies the water with who's got what. I am wondering about, because there's so much talk about blood clots and that sort of thing. Does radiation sickness actually cause blood clotting in the body?
Radiation sickness causes more bleeding.
Right. Okay. The opposite. Okay.
It causes nosebleeds. It causes internal bleeding.
Huh. Yeah. Right. So it weakens the capillaries.
Yes.
Okay.
It weakens them, and it interferes with platelets. I think it does a number of things to cause bleeding. Yeah.
So because there's so many symptoms in the last couple of years that people have never had before. A lot of it's being put down to long COVID. It's not really being linked, to the increased levels of radiation we're seeing. And, it is amazing how hard it is to find some products that aren't smart products these days. So just thinking what a challenge it is these days. You can't buy an old-fashioned iron these days where you can actually just adjust the temperature. Just about everything is getting more challenging, where they're trying to make everything smart, which...
Yeah. Smart appliances, smart refrigerators, smart everything.
Did you see that there's a funny episode of the most recent X-Files from 2018 where everything was smart? Did you see that episode by any chance?
No, I did not.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's sort of like 30 minutes where everything is controlled by robots, drones, devices on your phones, apps on your phones, and the whole thing goes to crap throughout this episode. The only two people in it, Scully and Mulder. It's a really funny episode, but I got to the end of it and I thought, holy crap. And at the time, I think I unattached my, okay, Google, tell me this. I thought, that's it. So we unplugged that. It was, yes.
It sounds like something I should watch.
It's very, very good. It's very good. It's from the 2018 episode, but it's all device and smart stuff and app oriented. And it's sort of like you run out of one thing, a drone turns up at your door and says, hey, here's your next one. That sort of thing, which, of course, is part of this whole Internet of Things. So you mentioned the Internet of the ocean or whatever you said before.
Internet of underwater things. Yeah, the Internet
they want
of
us
bodies.
connected to the Internet of Things. Oh, we already are. Internet of bodies. That's right. That's right. And is there much going on along the line of Supreme Court hearings and that sort of thing, or is this just not taking off in the court systems?
It is not taking off anywhere in the world in the court system. Not yet.
Because there's not enough outcry from people, like people just don't understand the risks, so they're just not getting involved?
There is that. There is also the wireless industry is one of the most important industries for the world economy, one of the biggest industries on the planet. They have a lot of influence, and if a judge was to rule that this has to stop, I don't know how long they would be a judge anymore. I think people are both in denial, and even if they believe it, they don't want to risk their career. It's both.
Do you think there's any hope getting rid of 5G?
I'm not about getting rid of 5G. I'm about getting rid of wireless technology, all of it.
Okay, yep. And that can be done one device at a time, just finding an alternative.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is there any hope? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there any hope? Is there any hope for life on our planet? I don't know.
And people don't even realize that they've created this prison for themselves where they're requiring all of this smart stuff to get by. You know, they don't leave their house without their
right.
mobile phones.
And they don't realize how much this has to do with their aches and pains and their brain fog and their lack of sleep and everything else that they're suffering, and their diabetes and what else not, and the reason that they're fat. And if they would put their devices in a metal box for a week, they would be amazed at at the incredible improvement in their health. And this happens to people that I know that have gotten rid of their cell phone, and they were amazed at the changes in their health.
Yeah, someone in an interview the other day was saying that a microwave is actually basically a Faraday cage. You put your mobile phone in a microwave, you can't ring it. It doesn't.
Well, actually, that's not true.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
It's not a good enough Faraday cage. If you put your microwave in a phone, actually, it will ring.
Oh, okay.
Huh. I mean, if you put your mobile phone in a microwave, yeah, it will ring.
I didn't try it, but I did think that was interesting because, like I said, I've got a doctor building a Faraday cage at the moment near me, and he's experimenting with quite a few things.
And speaking of microwave ovens, it's not good to eat microwave food.
No, it's not.
Not healthy.
Yeah, there's been so many studies where and people just don't, my brother's a GP, a doctor here in Australia, and he said, oh, but there's, he microwaves everything. You just can't tell some people. So tell me what microwaving your food does to it.
It's been analyzed that it changes the chemistry of the food. It also stores an electric charge in the food.
That I didn't know. Interesting.
Which dissipates in like 20 minutes to a half an hour. So if you really want to eat microwave food, don't eat it for half an hour after it comes out of the microwave, and that kind of defeats the purpose.
It does defeat the purpose, doesn't it? Yeah. I did not know that it built up. Huh.
Well, the way it heats your food is it aligns all of the polar water molecules with the rapidly reversing microwave field. So the field reverses direction 2.45 billion times per second. And every water molecule in the food attempts to line up with the direction of the field, and all the water molecules switch their direction 2.45 billion times per second. And as soon as you switch it off, every water molecule in your food is aligned in the exact same direction, and that is a form of stored energy. And if you eat it right away, it transfers that energy to your stomach and your body.
So once again, these microwaves are going to build up in people's bodies.
Right.
And it sounds like you're right in that it's going to be impossible for people to be detoxing. They just need to be getting away from them as much as possible, going cold turkey.
Yeah, people are constantly asking me, well, how do I protect myself from EMFs? How do I protect myself from my smart meter? How do I protect myself from the mobile phone tower? And they're calling me on a cell phone.
Yeah.
So I have to tell them, well, if you really want to protect yourself, number one, you have to stop using your cell phone. And they don't want to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just sort of thinking, my wired phone at home, it is still Wi-Fi, so it's still separate, it's not corded to the, and I sort of had not thought about that
Could
till
you
this
still get
second.
could you still get a copper landline in Australia?
I don't even know. I think they've all been, maybe, if, yes, I think so. I'll have to ask my hubby.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get the phones anymore. Like I remember last time we were trying to get a phone again, everything was smart, and I think we got the dumbest one we could so I could have a phone into the clinic. It's so challenging to get anything that isn't smart. So it's probably you need to go onto those websites where people have stuff for preppers. Those things are probably potentially more hardwired. Things like that.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
I would like you to mention again what these radio waves are doing in our body. Like, what are they doing in our body in this second, in this moment here on the planet?
They're interfering with our metabolism. They are interfering with our nerves and with our brain functioning. They're interfering with the pacemakers of our heart. They are interfering with the functioning of our acupuncture meridian. They're inducing electrical currents in our nerves and in our meridians and in our cells. They're inducing electric charges that build up in our body. Brief summary.
And like you say, it's not every disease on the planet that's connected to it, but I can imagine that it would make anything more challenging to get over.
It's connected with most neurological diseases, connected with ALS, it's connected with Alzheimer's disease, it's connected with attention deficit disorder in kids, it's connected with autism, and because the heart is regulated electrically, it's connected with a lot of cardiac disease too. Brain, neurological, cardiac disease.
Yeah, which of course are all increasing on the planet. And there's a lot of people concerned about bees on the planet.
Oh, they're disappearing completely.
Yeah.
And that's been going on since 1904.
And was that connected to irradiation?
Yes, on the Isle of Wight, where Marconi built the world's first radio station, as soon as that was built, the bees started disappearing on that island, and that has spread throughout the world. And I go into this in my book as well.
Right, and I saw in your petition against 5G that 5,000 beekeepers have signed it, so they're obviously very aware. Is it 5,000 or it was a lot? Who had signed the petition to sort of. So obviously
it was like about 1,500 beekeepers have signed.
Oh, 1,500. Sorry, no, but yeah, there was a lot of professionals on there who were obviously very aware of what's going on.
And I don't know how many 1,000 scientists have signed it, like 8,000 scientists and 14,000 engineers, and lots of professional people have signed it. Lots of veterinarians, lots of medical doctors.
Because cardiologists are very aware of the effect of EMFs and radiation on the heart, aren't they? Like they couldn't be unaware at this stage, I would imagine.
They should be, but I don't think they are.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of work to be done spreading the news, and obviously you're doing a huge amount of work towards that. So thank you. Any final thoughts, Arthur, on moving forwards? Any final thoughts?
Any final questions?
So getting rid of our smart meters, replacing our smart devices with non-smart devices, as dumb as we can get, all wired. We're talking wired, aren't we?
Wired devices, yes.
Yep.
Replace all wireless devices with wired devices. If wired devices don't exist, simply get rid of your wireless devices.
Right. From a naturopathic perspective, I always think supplements that people can do to support their body. Is there anything that you have found beneficial over the years?
Oh, probably the same thing that used to protect against ionizing radiation.
Yeah.
The Japanese, they used to use fermented foods, miso. I find that's beneficial. Sauerkraut, anything that's fermented.
Yeah, supporting the microbiome.
Yeah.
And that huge gut-brain connection, there's certain probiotics that really support that gut-brain connection. And just recently I was listening to an interview about parasites, and I've got no idea whether radiation, you know how the moon can increase the number of parasites in our body. They sort of, like farmers do anti-parasitic spraying and stuff around the full moon because they know they get more bang for their buck. So I wonder, I'm sort of wondering whether radiation might have an effect on parasites in the body. Have you seen anything about that?
I have not personally seen that, no.
Yeah, okay. No, that's cool. Because I was sort of, the whole thing about anxiety. Part of what this researcher was saying, that they found that parasites will use absolutely anything they can to nourish themselves. So part of what they will digest is the neurotransmitter that our gut releases. So that can be also part of the depression, anxiety, sleeplessness. So I'm sort of curious. I might actually do a little bit of poking around and see whether there's been anything about radiation on parasites, just out of curiosity. It feels like one of those things that can be connected to many health conditions.
There are various things that people do, such as earthing.
Oh, yes.
Standing barefoot on the ground, less and less effective because of all the satellites.
Yes. Yes.
So, because the more connected you are to the ground, the more the satellites are affecting you. So it's becoming harder and harder.
It is. It is. So with the pledge for people with going wired, that's for the equinox. When was it?
Yes.
March
21st, yes.
March. Okay, cool. So I'll try to see if I can round up some support for that. I think people are addicted to their mobile phones. I think it's a real challenge we've got, sort of, and I think you're right. At the very least, if people get themselves I was thinking a Faraday bag or something like that, and just sort of having it in there for most of the time and seeing whether people's health starts to improve, see if they can actually start seeing an improvement. But like you said, it took a long time for you to improve once you'd actually been damaged by the x-rays and by... So
I find that it takes not years, but at least several days to a week of being completely off of wireless for people to notice the change.
So, once again, it's good for people to have a bit of a timeline, because, a lot of people are very people want things to happen instantly. And this is not the sort of thing that happens instantly.
If you use a mobile phone, it damages the blood-brain barrier. Even if you use it only for a couple of minutes, it damages the blood-brain barrier. And that damage does not repair itself quickly. So you use a mobile phone 2 minutes today, and then you think, oh, I won't use it until tomorrow. That's not good enough, because the damage will last until tomorrow, and then you'll add to it. You really have to stop. We just have to say no, don't we? Okay, so if anyone has long-term pain and sickness and suffering, this really needs to be part of their solution for their long-term health, because the medications sort of only give people a brief window of support, but it doesn't fix anything at that cellular mitochondrial level. So This definitely feels like it's one of the big solutions, because all of the things you've been talking about, the blood-brain barrier, all of the neurological issues, the cardiac stuff, the damage to the internal organs, it's big stuff that's making people's lives unhappy and miserable. And the biggest crime, in my opinion, is when pregnant women use a cell phone in front of their bellies.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And then their babies are born with neurological problems or with cancer. It is happening all over the place.
With the number of the 5G cell towers being put up, because they're talking about needing one on every block in order for the 5G, because they're only short. They don't travel a long way. Is that right with 5G? So therefore they need more of them?
Well, they're blocked. They're blocked by objects.
Right.
So on the ground, they're blocked by trees and cars and people and buildings. But you can put 5G in a satellite in space, several hundred kilometers away, and there's nothing to block the signal. So, yes, they'll travel a long ways, but they won't go around objects.
Right. So it's line of sight. Okay. So with these, because they need so many of them down here on the planet, excluding the satellite sort of stuff, people who have them, like people are going to end up having them outside their houses if we don't stand up to this. It's going to be...
They already have them in many places.
Yeah. And I know that one of the people standing up in Australia speaking out, she was saying that when she sees people for fertility issues, and one of the first questions she asks them is, can you see a cell tower from your bedroom window?
Fertility issues?
Yeah.
One of the first questions I would ask them is, do you keep your mobile phone in your pocket?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's definitely part of her questionnaire. But
Yeah.
She herself didn't fall pregnant for a few years, and that's why she started looking into, dirty
Right.
electricity and Wi-Fi and
Sure.
all sorts of things. And she's one of the people in Australia standing up. I can't remember her name, but she was a naturopath who went into way more than that, so it was a really fantastic lecture that I heard. And there are some places in the world that are refusing to allow say mobile phones in schools, but it's not very often, is it? Like, I think France, there's some places that are sort of getting a bit of a headway, knowing the damage it's doing to little kids' brains. So they're trying to stop mobile phones being used.
There are few Italian cities, because of the historic nature of the cities, that they have not permitted mobile phone towers.
Right.
So there are a few Italian cities where mobile phones do not work to preserve the architect.
Well, I don't care what reason they use to allow less of them, but anything's better than nothing. I mean, let's hope the tourists don't jump up and down and complain about that so that they change their mind, but that's a good thing. So you've got a big year ahead of you, sort of keeping the fight going, and let's hope that many, many people sign up to getting back to the old style phones and getting rid of their mobile phones.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. I it's given me a lot to think about, and I definitely will wander around and see. I keep meaning to buy one of those little devices to see how much radiation is going on in different parts of my house. Do you have one that you recommend at all?
Oh.
Or do they all do a similar thing?
There may be manufacturers there in Australia, so you won't have to order it all the way from the United States.
Oh, okay. But they're all very similar in the way that they work?
No, they're all different.
Okay.
The one I use is made by Cornet. The one I've been recommending recently is made by Safe Living Technologies in Canada. And they actually have a sale going on right now, so maybe people want to check that out.
Are there any other websites or people that you recommend to keep an eye out for information? Like, is there anyone who is also on the forefront that you would recommend paying attention to?
Safe Technology International is a good group.
Safe Technology International.
Yeah, they used to be called Stop 5G International, and now they're more comprehensive. I think they're called Safe Tech International.
Okay. Excellent. Because like you say, even if we individually get rid of our mobile phones, there's still so many smart devices and so many smart houses and so many smart, it's just we are being connected to that Internet of Things, and we need to protect ourselves as much as possible while our governments are not going to do it for us.
Well, not yet. Not
yet. That's right. One person at a time. We need to sign, we need to pledge, we need to make those first steps.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Arthur, and good luck with 2023.
You too, Madonna.
Excellent. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.